Hello, everyone. This is Raise Your Voice as part of the Fans First Sports Network. It is opening day eve, and I'm your host, Brett Rutherford, joined, as always, by my good friend and co-host, Darby Robinson. Darby, it's almost here, the start of a new season. It feels like no matter how good or bad your team is projected to be, unless you're the Oakland A's, you should be excited about opening day. Everybody starts off with a clean slate, except for the Dodgers and Padres. They've already played 2 games.
Yes.
But the Rays
they're starting 1-1. So they're also starting with
clean
a clean
slate.
slate.
Yeah, exactly. The Rays are taking on the Toronto Blue Jays, and it felt like when we talked last week that maybe there was a move to be had, but most things were set in stone. We kind of knew that Waguespack was going to make the team. For Taj Bradley, they added him to the 40-man roster, probably to jump ahead of any, clause that he could, go sign with another team. But now today, it feels like a flurry of moves, not only involving the Rays, but some other teams as well. Our good friend Pete Bendix down in South Florida got involved, made a couple of trades that involved the Rays. And Darby, let's get into it, because obviously the core of the team, nothing crazy was going to happen there, but the bench kind of is not at all what I expected it to look like come opening day. Let's start with that. Well, let's start with the first move, not talking about the trades. Austin Shenton is going to be on the opening day roster.
Yes.
Let's talk about his inclusion over, I guess we'll have to say it's over Nico Goodrum. Like him and Curtis Mead make it over Nico
Which
Goodrum.
was another trade they made.
Yeah, we'll talk about that acquisition in a second, but let's talk about Austin Shenton. What role do you foresee him playing, at least for the time being, on the big league squad?
Yeah, that's like a nice. We kind of speculated, I think, last week about potentially Shenton as like an option, as an internal option there. With the Aranda injury, I think that opens the door, at least in the short term, for Austin Shenton to get a chance. The Rays are really high on his bat. He kind of like rocketed up the prospect rankings last year. He was sort of fringe top 30 guy for the Rays, and then after last season where he absolutely torched AA, got a promotion into AAA, torched AAA, rocketed up into the top 10 in the Rays. I think on Pipeline he was number 8 prospect for the Rays. So tremendous season, absolute rocket shot all the way up. And I think the Rays did some moves in the offseason and during the trade deadline last year that kind of suggested maybe they were pretty high on Shenton. He not only got added to be protected from the 40-man or from the Rule 5, he was also, potentially his emergence allowed them to be more comfortable trading Kyle Manzardo, because Shenton is also a probably primarily first base prospect at this point. He has played third base. He has played a little bit in the outfield, but he's pretty much a first base limited defensive guy. They potentially liked him so much that they felt comfortable trading Manzardo for Savale, because they had Shenton in the near term, and you have obviously Xavier Isaac in the long term. Shenton's brings a very good left-handed bat. We had talked about the Rays kind of were very right-handed heavy. With Aranda going down, a huge bat prospect from the left-hand side, Shenton kind of fills that role. He's a guy that brings a lot of contact and power. He's got a good on-base percentage. Last year, he really jumped up with the walk rate. So he's somebody that I think can bring a good stick to the park every single day. And I think in the short term, he gives you an opportunity from the Rays to give it a shot, to see what you have in Shenton, see if those kind of helium he had last year has the real juice. Like, is this guy like a legit guy? And you have a couple weeks with some injuries to give him a shot and provide a lefty bat from the bench that you kind of were missing.
I think we'll see early on. I think we'll see tomorrow how much the Rays believe in Austin Shenton. You've got a right-handed pitcher in Jose Barrios, and we're going to do a whole series breakdown a little bit later. But he was, I mean, now there's 4 left-handed bats on the team with the addition of Ben Rortvedt. We'll talk about him in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But Austin Shenton is that third left-handed bat. And it's still, the Rays are still really right-handed heavy to start the season. But you're facing a right-handed pitcher tomorrow. Harold Ramirez is the guy we had penciled in as the DH. And maybe he is. I mean, but Shenton's not moving, Diaz or Paredes off of their position unless they're getting a day in the DH slot or just a day off completely. So if he starts as the DH tomorrow, I think that would be a big sign of how much they believe in him. I know we don't love talking about spring training results on this podcast. And I'm not using this to write Austin Shenton off. But after coming off a great season in the minor leagues between AA and AAA, in which he just hit, drew a ton of walks. I mean, both at AA and at AAA, the walk rate was above 15%. He hit 29 home runs on the season over both levels. He has had a horrendous spring training at the plate. 195 batting average, 214 on base, 244 slugging. That's 42 plate appearances. He only drew 1 walk and struck out 14 times. He does strike out quite a bit, but he balances it out with the walks that he draws. That wasn't the case in spring training. And not to use those results as like to paint the picture of what his season will look like, but I do wonder if there's a bit of a worry from the Rays that he might not be ready to face big league pitching on a consistent basis yet. And so that's why I'm curious what his role is. It going to be like a pinch hit role for, maybe he can pinch hit for a Jose Caballero late in game or Rene Pinto late in game, although I think they're pretty high on Pinto's bat as well. Or do they truly see him as the bigger side of that platoon with Harold Ramirez, who I think they're comfortable having hit against both righties and lefties. I mean, do you think he starts tomorrow on opening day?
I'm very curious to see this lineup because I agree with you that it's the sign of like you hear the Rays talk about how we love this guy, we love this guy, we love this guy. Then it's like, okay, how much do you actually love him? Are you really that committed, or are you just saying sweet nothings? And yeah, if he is the starting DH tomorrow, I think the Rays are very, very high on him. Actually high on him, not just very excited about him as a potential prospect and very eager to potentially say we love him, so don't just trade us nothing for him in those deals. I think that's a good sign of that. I'm not worried about spring training numbers at all. I think there's a lot more that goes into the numbers too. Like, I think that's the thing from teams internally. I think swing decisions and path and a lot of those things that we're not really necessarily like focusing in on. I think that kind of is a good sign for that. So like, I don't know where that is. I think one thing that's potentially there is the fact that he made the club over Nico Goodrum as your bench guy. So like, maybe that's just adding another lefty bat, but like he's so limited defensively that I don't really see. I don't know if it's necessarily needed if you're not going to play him. So I'm curious. I'm very curious to see what the setup is there. I mean, I think you're going to face a lot of righties, obviously, early in the season. Maybe even Kikuchi is like one of the few like lefties you're going to face as a starter. So there might be an opportunity to give Harold a day off here or there, but I would be surprised if he is starting more than Harold and it's like a strict platoon in that regard. And we know, actually, there was a really good on the most recent Rates and Barrels podcast, Saris and Mike Petriello were talking about how platooning and the way teams are doing it now is less about strict righty lefty and a lot more about swing plane and kind of the way how like kind of like they know a lot more internally now and with their data of like how people how batters swing through and how successful they are against certain types of pitching and pitch types and release points and pitch shapes, so that you can be much more in the macro or micro, I should say, when it comes to deciding who's maybe a platoon advantage. So it may not be just a righty lefty thing, but it might be, Barrios his pitch repertoire and the shape of his pitches matches up really well with Austin Shenton's swing plane, more so than Harold Ramirez. So there's a lot more into that I wouldn't necessarily be so all in on, but I do think I would be very excited to see if he does start, because I think that suddenly is like maybe a sign from the Rays that they're quite in on Austin Shenton's ceiling. I do see myself, just personally, I thought it was a little bit of a surprise that he got added. A very pleasant surprise. I'm very excited for him. I do see him not necessarily being in a lot of starting lineups. They're not how I've penciled him in his starting lineups recently. I think with Harold Ramirez here, I think he's somebody that I think the team trusts to be the DH, and I feel comfortable with that too. So he's not in my opening day lineup, but I'm very curious to see if he's in Kevin Cash's.
Yeah, I don't think he'll start tomorrow either. I'm interested to see what his playing time looks like in the coming days, because while I do think the Rays like Austin Shenton, this is a move they've made out of necessity, not out of choice.
Right.
I mean, think about the left-handed bats that would have made it over him, Josh Lowe and Jonathan Aranda, who both got hurt. I mean, he is, I think, right now in the Aranda role, where not so great defense. We like the left-handed bat. He's kind of shown Aranda more so, but they kind of shown everything they can show at the minor league level. We're ready for them to contribute at the big league level, but he does kind of slot into that Aranda role. And I do think the Rays had probably a bigger slice of playing time ready for Aranda had he not got hurt, which was had that injury. Did that injury happen before we after we last spoke, or before we last potted?
We did. Yeah, it did.
The move that we do need to backtrack and cover, because we talked about him a lot actually on the last episode, was Greg Jones. Greg Jones being traded to the Rockies. We wondered whether he would kind of get this spot on the roster, and he was shipped off to Colorado for an interesting pitcher whose name is Rock, right? Joe Rock. Joe Rock.
It's like somebody's trying to like remember the pitcher for the Rockies, and they're just like Joe Rock.
We also had like Joe Record in camp.
Yeah.
And then like if you create a player on MLB The Show, the generic name is Joe Random. So maybe the Rays will sign him too.
Maybe.
But they've got Joe Rock, who's an interesting pitcher. I don't want to he will not break camp with the team, so maybe we can talk about him at a later date.
Somebody that could definitely pitch for this team later this year. And maybe get like a spot start here or there. Tall lefty with a really funky, like kind of Chris Sale, Tanner Houck style arm angle. So somebody for Durham, somebody for you in Durham, Brett. But not so much for the Rays. But yeah, that shed a 40-man spot.
Right.
Which then was added for another minor trade of Nico Goodrum, who.
And do we know for sure that it was a trade? Because I've heard a couple conflicting things.
It's not a trade officially. It's one of the Twins reporters was talking about this. It's basically in his contract, like an escalator. He had to be added to the 40-man. The Rays sort of just basically bought his contract outright.
Okay.
So they didn't send anything to Minnesota. It's not even like cash considerations. It's more of a transferring of a contract, because he basically needed to be added to the 40-man to get his next like level escalator.
Are you shocked that he is not going to be on the opening day roster?
I was actually kind of surprised too. Not so much. I mean, he also had a very bad spring training, but like he's a vet guy. He actually had a very good AAA season with Boston, and then also had a pretty decent season in the KBO. Somebody that is a fairly good defensive outfielder, can also play infield defense and like kind of played all over, like shortstop, third base, second base, switch hitter. Kind of felt like the perfect 26th man, right? Like elite level base running skills, not elite level speed, but very, very good base runner. Somebody who's a vet who's been around the majors for a little while. So like kind of your Raimel Tapia type, like nothing spectacular, but
this is
like
the move we talked about last week, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is what we were wanting.
Solid replacement level vet who will not mind sitting most of the time and potentially come in as a pinch runner / defensive replacement. Like that seemed like the role. In Topkins' notes, though, it seems like he is just adding to the team and to the 40-man, but not starting the year in the majors as of right now, at least. That's what Topkin is saying is he is going to Durham, and that Curtis Mead is getting his spot basically.
Yeah. Curtis Mead we'll get to Mead in a second, but Goodrum, I think, and again, goes into why I'm shocked he is not on the opening day roster. One, he's got that positional versatility over a Shenton or a Mead, right? Those guys are only really on the team for their bats. They are both known as like not great defenders that can play third. Mead could maybe play second. Shenton probably projects as a first baseman, and if you project as a first baseman, it's because you cannot play anywhere else. Goodrum would offer that positional versatility. He would offer that experience. And when the move happened, our great friend from Who's on Worst, who is also a Tigers fan and a contributor to Bless You Boys, another great SB Nation site, got to get to know Niko Goodrum a lot during his time with Detroit, and said that he was just seemed like an awesome human. And I think that's an important part of like that last spot on the roster is like, you're not going to get as many opportunities to provide value on the field. So what we need you to be is flexible. We need you to be able to come in as a defensive replacement, as a pinch runner, and to also, bring some good vibes into the dugout and into the clubhouse. I think the best example of that in recent years for the Rays is Brett Phillips.
Totally.
We knew you could use him as a pinch runner. You could bring him in to pitch. You could,
you could.
He was a versatile player. You could play all three outfield spots and a great person. And I was like thinking, okay, this Goodrum move feels like maybe this team is getting a little too young on the position player side. The bench, we've gone through a few injuries in the last couple of weeks. Who can we bring in that one has a big league floor, right? And I'm not trying to say Niko Goodrum was going to be a really good, productive player for the Rays, because I wasn't expecting him to be. But that versatility and that experience, I'm shocked they decided to leave him off in favor of some of the guys they chose. But the fact that he's on the 40-man and some of these roles are still very fluid at this point, I think we'll see him at some point. And he will start in Durham. And we mentioned, some of the guys I'll see in Durham. And I'm going to my first game Tuesday, the home opener. Jake Odorizzi is actually starting, which who would have thought?
Flashback.
Right.
Flashback, yeah.
So I'm excited for that. And I'm hoping, maybe I can give some weekly updates as I go to games of which pitchers looked really interesting, who might be next on the Durham shuttle. Maybe I can tweet out some live updates, some hug watch updates, right?
You can hug watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can be active hug watching.
Because we are first row on the first baseline next to the visitors dugout, which means I'll have a great view into the home dugout. So I will be on hug watch, especially as the Durham shuttle gets going. But let's move on to the inclusion of Curtis Mead on the opening day roster. He's kind of been the guy in flux, right? We've kind of gone back and forth all offseason, and what is his role going to be? I think they see him. I don't know what they see him as now. I thought it was going to be like the platoon for Brandon Lau at second base. Now they've brought in Ahmed Rosario. Maybe he plays more of that role. Maybe Mead can DH, but you still have Harold Ramirez. And again, I think if everyone was fully healthy, Curtis Mead starts in AAA. But the fact that he's here now, what do you see his role as to start the season?
It's a great question, because I still am not all the way easily picturing him on the roster, right? Like he's doesn't bring a ton of defensive. He has some defensive versatility, but a lot more defensive question marks too. Speed is fine, but like nothing special you don't want on the bench. He's an excellent hitter, though. I think that is the thing, is he is a exceptional hitter, and he's done pretty much everything you can do. He's done all that you can prove in AAA. So I think he is somebody that the Rays just believe in that bat, and they believe that he can contribute in the majors. And so I think he's going to be there. I'm very curious to see how, just like with Austin Shenton, how does Kevin Cash how does he get him involved, right? How does he get him into action? Because, your two easiest places for him are covered already in Isaac Paredes and Yandy Diaz. And with DH, I think you can use him for Harold Ramirez. But it's when is the scenario where you're going to use Curtis Mead over Harold Ramirez and you're not going to use Austin Shenton? And if you're going to use Curtis Mead against a lefty, you should definitely be using Harold Ramirez. And maybe it's you use Harold. Maybe you go, and we'll probably find this out when Kikuchi is starting. Maybe you go a little creative and you have Mead at second, Harold Ramirez in the outfield, or Mead at DH, Ahmed Rosario at second, and Harold Ramirez in right field. And then you get all three of those right-handed bats in there against lefties. But there's not that many left-handed pitchers. So you're really limited as to how often you can employ that complete lineup. However, that he does provide you a very, very advanced bat off of the bench. And maybe the Rays are going to try to do some more cycling through and getting people off their feet. Maybe Yandy Diaz doesn't start all 7 of these first 7 games. Maybe you do see some more breaks with Brandon Lau, who's had a history of injuries. Maybe you try to allow Paredes to move around a little bit, and you maybe are a little bit more aggressive in shifting players around and less stagnant and set than the Rays have been in the last couple of years. Maybe that is the strategy. I don't know. I wouldn't mind seeing that early on, especially because keeping Brandon Lau healthy, especially at the end of the season, is going to be really big. Same with Yandy Diaz, and giving them rest could be very helpful. But yeah, it's not an easy position to pencil in Curtis Mead right now. But I am very excited that he's making the team because I do think he is a heck of a bat, and I want to see him have a role. It's just it's not an easy fit. It really isn't.
It's not. And again, the roster looks the way it does because of some of the injuries. Like, we knew Johnny DeLuca and Josh Lowe and Jonathan Aranda were probably all going to be in these spots. And they've had to change some things. And so it looks a little different. The roster is a fluid thing. One of the biggest things I learned, and I've said that on the show before, is when we talked to Erik Neander before the start of the season, this was 3-4 seasons ago, he was not as concerned with the opening day roster as we were. Because that's all we have to think about for all of spring training. Who's going to break camp with the team? What's this roster going to look like? They're playing the long game, right? You've got guys, Austin Shenton, Curtis Mead, who they believe in their bats so much. We don't know what their roles are going to look like, but it's fine. They're going to get some time with the big league team this year, early on. Maybe, they go back to Durham pretty quickly. Maybe some other guys come up. Maybe there's some more outside moves to be had. But this is how the team's going to look like tomorrow. It doesn't mean that's how it'll look like next week. So I want to get to another move they made for a backup catcher. So actually the first of 2 deals, or this is the second of 2 deals that the Rays and the Marlins made. And first off, I think there probably needs to be a league investigation into tampering between Erik Neander and Pete Bendix. They've made I feel like 5 deals this offseason.
Yeah. They had that Birch Smith trade just to bump up the numbers. They were just let's try it out.
And it feels like, other than Birch Smith, who was with the Rays, I think after Bendix had left, it feels like it's Pete Bendix coming back to get all the guys that he really liked and maybe, was the reason they were in the organization. And it's I want to bring them to Miami with me. Because they were involved in a 3-team deal, the Rays, the Marlins, and the Yankees. First of 2 trades that the Rays made today with American League East division rivals. But in the trade,
2 evil empires.
Yes. In the trade, Marlins infielder John Birdie goes to the Yankees. I think that's actually a decent move by the Yankees. Rays prospect Shane Sasaki goes to the Marlins. And then Yankees reserve catcher Ben Rortvedt comes to the Rays in the deal. Ben Rortvedt, Verona, Wisconsin native. My grandparents lived there for a long time, just outside of Madison. First off, though, I did not buy for a second, the whole offseason, that the Rays were all in on the Pinto Jackson catching duo. Like I've been saying, like Rortvedt maybe doesn't like get me super pumped up. Like that's not the acquisition that I'm freaking out over, but it did feel like they've wanted a catcher all offseason. They brought in Francisco Mejia. They looked around to see if that would work out, but they finally got their guy, right? A glove first guy, but maybe who's got a little bit of power and a little bit of a bat that hasn't shown itself at the big league level because he has not got a lot of opportunities to play at the big league level. But what are your thoughts on this acquisition of Ben Rortvedt?
I love it. I love this trade for all three teams, actually. I think the Marlins did pretty well. I think they got two nice little prospects. Cruz from the Yankees seems pretty decent, and Sasaki, it's just like you run out of space, right? Sasaki's a Rule 5 eligible guy next year, so you're kind of getting a head start on your Rule 5 trimming. Birdie is got a lot of speed, pretty solid defensively, and the DJ LeMay who just got hurt. So like that slots right in for the Yankees. They kind of needed that person. And I even called it. I a couple of weeks ago in the Slack was even talking about, I was looking through the list of like catchers that have no more options left that might be running out. And the two names that came up for me were Joey Bart with San Francisco and Ben Rortvedt with the Yankees, because the Yankees had three catchers. Trevino and Wells were ahead of Rortvedt, but Rortvedt was, up until today, he was on roster resources. Like he was on their bench. They were going to have three catchers because Rortvedt is pretty darn good to just drop, right? He is not like, he is a hard guy that you cut because he is somebody that catchers with good defense are not easy to find. I think this is extremely important to note. And I think when people talk about, and we talked about it too, like being uncomfortable with the catching depth of the Rays, you look around and there's not a lot out there, right? Like catching is a very, very, very difficult position to be deep in. It's a very, very difficult position to have more than one guy that you want to play. And it's a very physically demanding position. So injuries happen, and you really want to be able to cycle through people. So you look around and there's not a lot out there available that is pretty easy to come by. And if they're really good, they're going to cost a ton.
Yeah. Look what Will Smith just signed. 10-year contract for a catcher. There you go. $140 million.
Yeah.
It's a tough market.
The Dodgers have some really good prospects coming up, but they're prospects, and catching prospects, they take years to develop. Will Smith,
look at Rene Pinto.
Success stories. Rene Pinto is a great story.
Yeah, he's one of the organization for like 11 years. And they're just now comfortable with letting him giving him the reins. And I do think like he is
Jonah Heim. That's another former Ray. He's bounced around to 3. So it was the Orioles, the Rays, the A's, and then the Rangers. And then the rain, and it just last year basically was him kind of coming out party. It takes a long time. It's a very difficult position to develop.
Well, in I think a lot of it is like how much time do you spend not being able to be in the cages, right? Like you're going to be working with pitchers. That is your job. You get to camp early to do that. And so there's just a lot of things that go into being a catcher that take a little bit longer to develop, make it a little harder to project out. I just think about guys like Ronaldo Hernandez, who was one time thought of as the Rays catcher of the future, and they traded him for, ended up being for Jeffrey Springs. But at the time, I don't think we thought a whole lot of that trade. And so interesting. I feel a little more safe about, I'd rather your backup catcher be a glove first catcher than a bat first catcher. And so I'm a little more happy with them going over with Rortvedt over Jackson. And if you had a bench of Jackson, Mead, Shenton, that's terrible. You have no defensive.
It's a lot of questions. It's a lot of questions. It's a lot of questions, not a lot of answers. I think and here's the thing: you still have Jackson, right? He is a phone call away, and you can try this out. I remember a conversation I had with Mike Zunino in Seattle when I was out there. Who happy retirement, Papa Mike. And Mike Zeno I was talking to him about that, how it was during the season where his bat exploded for the Rays, but like for a long time he wasn't there, and he talked about how like hitting is just not even close to something he's thinking about like ever, right? He is like, the primary job is I'm scouting the other pitchers, I'm scouting my pitchers, I'm working with Kyle Snyder, I'm working with the scout team. He's doing so much work and homework on he knows every single pitcher that's coming out. He knows all of the pitchers and the angles and stuff for the Rays. He knows how to attack batters. He knows the game plan. And it's like you have to do all of that. And then, like you said, you then have to get into the cage. Then you have to also be able to like attack these other pitchers that you're doing. So there's so many things that you're like, having to work on.
You get beat up, right? You're just back there. Your knees have to be killing you. How much time do you think catcher spends
in right field, hanging out, maybe playing 2 balls a game and just sort of chilling? And the catcher is every single pitch is thrown to him, every single one.
And how much more time do they spend in the training room? Like there's so much that goes into it. But I feel better with Rortvedt.
With Rortvedt, I do want to say I'm particularly excited about Rortvedt, right? Because I did sort of identify him. It wasn't just like, well, it wasn't like a Rob Brantley type of trade where it's like he's a vet, he can catch, like whatever. Like we need a body, right? And it's like, no offense to Rob Brantley, but like that, like he is always going to have a job too because he's still able to catch, and like that's, again, like I said, that's hard. So
they're Rob like Brantley, those career backup quarterbacks that like kill it in the film room. They're future coaches. Like that's what your backup catchers are. It's what you want them to be. Provides value.
Marcus Mariota made as a draft bust. He is he just got another job, and he will keep getting jobs until like he's done with like the sport, because a backup quarterback is really essential.
And they find other ways to provide value in, in that dugout, in that clubhouse, working with pitchers when they're throwing bullpens and simulated games throughout the week, showing up early to the ballpark. Like they are your org soldiers, right? Like these guys, you need players like that. And I don't know Ben Rortvedt personally. I hope he's like that, but from everything we've heard about who he is.
Well, this is the thing with Rortvedt, right? He was one of the key pieces of the Yankees made the big like kind of trade with like Gary Sanchez over to the Twins, and they got Rortvedt back. They also took on Josh Donaldson's salary, and that worked out great.
You didn't say happy retirement for Josh Donaldson. I'm wondering why.
Yeah, moving on. I'm happy I don't get to watch him play anymore. I am happy about that. So, I was going to say something about Jackie Robinson, but you know what? I'm going to leave that to Josh Donaldson. So here's the thing with Rortvedt. He's been a above average defensive catcher for the most part, but there is an interesting bat there. Like he has not hit well in the majors. He's been hurt a lot, which happens as a backup, as a catcher. But there is some signs there that there could be a bat that could do more, right? He's here for his framing, his blocking, his catching. That's what he's here for. He's going to bring a good glove to the park. He's not going to give you a drop off from Rene Pinto. He's going to be a guy that like you feel comfortable with managing the staff. The keys there are like, what can he bring at the plate? And there is some interesting stuff there. It has not been successful so far, but in the minors, he has hit pretty darn well. In a short time in the majors, he's shown that he's a heavy pull hitter. This spring, he was at 57.9% pulled balls. He doesn't chase, which is a big key. His chase rate and his walk rate are really good. Last year, in very limited playing time, about like 80 plate appearances or so, he had a 24.7% chase rate. If you want to compare that, Yandy Diaz has a 22.6% career chase rate. So if you're in the below 25%, you're in the elite level of chase. So he walks, he can get on base at a pretty good clip. Last year was a definite improvement there. He has a max exit velocity of 111. So you kind of 108 is sort of the like max EV, I guess Mendoza line, really. Mm-hmm. Like if you're under 108, you're kind of at the max EV. That's like, maybe you just don't have the power to consistently hit for power. If you have a ball over that, then you have that power in your bat. So he clears that. His freaking biceps are massive. He's going to give Yandy a run for his money when it comes to that. And
he's
similar
got
to Yandy, he doesn't have a lot of home runs.
Right. He's got like the Wisconsin farm, like this guy, like he's got pure
pulled
muscle.
A tractor. He has pulled a tractor at some point that was stuck in the mud. But yeah, I mean, high max EV, low chase, good walk rate, heavy pull. That's the ingredients right there that you want in a hitter. And so there is so for scouting for him, one of the complaints was he a little slow at the bat. So bat speed was a little slow, got a lot of grounders. But what is the one thing that the scouting report said that he could improve on to get to that next level at the plate? What is the one thing that jumps out at him that he needs to improve on?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
He needs to elevate and pull fly balls more to tap into that raw power. Wow, look at that. Elevating and pulling fly balls more often.
Sounds like the Chad Mottola special.
It's crazy that the Rays have basically said, like, man, what if we built the whole plane out of Isaac Paredes? Like, can we just get all Isaac Paredes up top to bottom? But that is the method, right? That is going to be the coaching. That is what Mottola is going to be coaching. That is what the Rays have seemingly been targeting, is guys that pull the ball well, have that pop, have a strike zone command, right? So he's not chasing. So he's understanding where the zone is. He's doesn't have the strongest contact rate, which is where Yandy's skill really is. Like, he pairs a low chase weight with a high contact rate and high exit velocity. So like, that's the perfect combo. Yandy's one of the most pure perfect hitters you can imagine. Rortvedt doesn't quite have that, but he knows the zone and he has the power. He already is a pull guy. If you can get him to start basically finding the pitches to target and attacking the pitchers that he's identifying, it's the same exact lesson that Johnny DeLuca was given. It's the same exact lesson that Richie Palacios has had a great spring doing. It's the same thing that Isaac Paredes became a 30 home run guy in. It's not something that you can just do for everybody, but like certain guys that can really know the zone and can identify pitches need to start saying, hey, start attacking these pitches, your pitches, the pitches that you can elevate. Because that's all you want to do. We don't want a grounder the other way. We want you to be able to find the pitch that you can elevate and pull those fly balls, because your power is going to take that pulled fly ball out of the park more often than not. So I'm very excited about Rortvedt. I still think Pinto is your starter. I think they do really believe in him. I do believe that. But catching is not a position you can do 150 games a year. I think if Pinto gets 100 games and Rortvedt gets 62, that's a huge split. That's very rare. I think it's going to be probably more in that like 90, 95 for Pinto, and then Rortvedt gets the rest. But it's a long season, and catching, like we said, it's brutal. So I think that's a great end of spring, day before opening day. You've upgraded a position, a position of need, and that's awesome.
And what it does, like what these moves do tell me, is like those fears that I was conveying on last week's episode, that the Rays had similar fears, right? Like this roster before the moves were made, not quite there. So they bring in Rortvedt, they bring in Goodrum, and we'll start the year in AAA. They also dealt away another like notable acquisition this offseason, Naoki Iwasawa, who was not going to break camp with the team. Had said before, like, I'm fine going to Durham, because like, of course he said that. Like, I mean, what else is he going to say?
He had somebody to sign him.
And then was exploring his options once he was told that the team, he would not be on the big league roster. And he gets shipped off to Boston. And interesting trade, another trade with the Rays and their AL East rivals. So I'm guessing he's going to be in their rotation. Like, I don't know what their plans are.
He's at least going to be on the 40 man, which
gets
him the money. That triggers his deal. So now he's going to get money.
So, but he's not going to be with the
man.
Rays. and
but he's not going to be with the Rays. Yeah. And it's notable, right? Like, I think the Rays brought him in, and apparently he had major league deals that he passed up because he wanted to come learn with the Rays. Did not have a good spring training. Showed some good stuff, but again, some of the bigger fears are he has a lot of pitches, one of which is good. The rest are pretty below average. And command is the one thing. And kind of learning the pitch clock, getting command. And if you are not fully dotted, those subpar pitches are going to get absolutely hammered. And we sort of saw that. So I think Uesawa could be a really good pitcher. I still think he is a work in progress, though. And I think his best bet is to trim down those pitches, really focus in, and get with an organization that can like really teach him that. Boston feels like they're just going to need innings, which I don't know is it's the best spot for him.
Yeah,
because they lost Lucas Giolito. They don't have a lot of pitching depth. They are too cheap to sign Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery, which they desperately needed. So they're keeping it on the field in Liverpool. That's where the money's going. And I'm not saying anything that Boston fans won't say, but even more vitriolic. I'm being actually kind of nice to John Henry. Boston media, not going to be as nice to you over there, Boston, especially as Mookie Betts becomes like a 10-win shortstop. Yeah, there you go. No, I think Uesawa. I mean, I think for Boston that's fine. I just don't think it's. I think with the Rays, when it comes to pitching, there's a really clear sign that the Rays decided they needed to keep Waguespack over Uesawa. That was a more important person to not opt out. I think when it comes to the Rays, I think that's maybe a signal. They know quite a bit. They saw Uesawa. They said, he needs more seasoning, so we're not going to let him here. And then they brought in Jake Odorizzi, who kind of fits that same role, right? It was a high command innings eater veteran who, if his command isn't there, he's going to get lit up. But if his command is, he can actually do pretty well. And Jake Odorizzi is starting the year in Durham to kind of build up his arm. So I think Odorizzi came in. That was kind of maybe that signal that like the Rays and Uesawa, if you wanted to stick around, great. But if not, they had a ready-made replacement.
Yeah. I think it's just that the Rays, not that they wouldn't have liked to keep him, but there was going to be a lot of risk if you were going to put him on the big league roster. That was one that I thought they were a lot higher on him than they were. I thought he would kind of slide in. I mean, a couple months ago, when pitchers and catchers reported, I thought he was going to be the fifth starter and they might start Taj Bradley in AAA. And just because I thought they needed like someone reliable who could throw a lot of innings. But I think it's become clear that if he were to throw 150 plus innings in the big leagues this year, I don't think his numbers will look great. Not to say that he can't continue to get better and develop in the United States. I do think his role is going to be more of like a multi-inning reliever, at least to start, as he begins his big league career. So that kind of like rounds out the opening day roster. It hasn't been like officially, I know some teams did like an official announcement of their rosters today. But I mean, the Rays roster pretty much set in stone. We've gone through the position player side. On the pitcher side, Eflin, who's going to be starting tomorrow, Savale, Littell, Tyler Alexander, Ryan Pepio, Pete Fairbanks, and I'm wearing my Florida State hoodie today after the jab that Pete Fairbanks threw at Florida State in an interview for ESPN.com. But I can confirm, like as someone who attempts to do the crossword quite often, I'm not very good at it either. So maybe he's right. Maybe he's onto something about Florida State alum not being the best at the New York Times crossword. The rest of the bullpen, though: Pete Fairbanks, Jason Adam, Colin Poche, Phil Maton, Sean Armstrong, Garrett Clevenger, Chris Davinsky, and then Jacob Waguespack. We're assuming he was added to the 40-man for that reason. Am I missing someone?
I think that's got to be no. That's all of them. But I think Waguespack got the official
Okay.
I think he got the official. I mean, Tompkins been basically saying it as official. So I think he got. It's kind of a tough time of year, right? Because it's like it's him, but like I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure Waguespack got the official nod as
Like
he
you're
is,
making the team.
He's making the team. Yeah, I think I remember reading that.
Okay.
Apologies if not.
So yeah, it makes things interesting. We know the weekend rotation. It will go Eflin, Savale, Littell. Have they announced that Alexander is starting Sunday's game?
That's what not announced starting.
Okay,
Tompkins has basically announced that he is going in game 4. So maybe an opener, maybe straight start, probably a piggyback at the very least, you know, which is interesting because that's lining up with Kevin Gausman, who is kind of coming back. He got injured in spring and he's kind of pitching through that a bit. So he's probably going to be on a pitch count, probably like 65 pitches, something like that. So it might be a bullpen, extended bullpen test for both teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I think they're holding Gausman back. I don't know if they've officially announced a weekend rotation, but I think it'll be Bowden Francis.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is interesting because him and Jose Caballero played junior college ball together at Chipola in 2017, where they won the NJCAA World Series together.
That's so cool.
Yeah, both on that team. So it'd be interesting to see them face off in the opening weekend. Francis is a Tallahassee native, so
that'd be really cool. Now I'm rooting for that.
Yeah, me too. So
also to push Gausman,
right? That's the way Roster Resource has it listed, and it's been announced that Francis is going to be in the rotation, and so I'm not quite sure how they're going to manage Gausman. So now that we're kind of into this series preview, right? There's real baseball. Like I think I admitted last week that I haven't watched like any spring training. It is like I just purchased my MLB TV yesterday. So and now that I'm not in Florida, I can't watch Bally Sports anymore or like the Florida channels. So that's been part of it. But I've kind of just wanted to go into this season on like a clean slate. Like I've been reading everything, like I've been keeping up with the team, obviously, but haven't watched any games. So I'm very excited for tomorrow and for this weekend.
If you know the record of the Rays in spring training, you're a degenerate, and
you're a sicko.
Because I don't know. You're a real sicko, man. Get some help. You and Ipe need to just get into some help here.
Did we not win the Grapefruit League this year?
Who knows? Who cares? I don't know.
Did we win? What was
Phillies?
What about the trophy with the cup, like the athletic cup, like that we? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
So it's like the Rays and Twins. The Rays and Twins every year they play for like this trophy in spring training. I don't think I'm making that up. I can't
say that I have.
Okay, anyways.
I can't imagine you would be able to make that up. Yeah, no, spring training, again, stats and results. I mean, like pitchers can be pulled and then put back in. It all doesn't matter. It's all just for fun, right? It's great as a fan experience because it's cheap. You get out, it's sunny, it's beautiful. You get to come out, you get to see some players, you get some autographs. It's a great fan experience. So I would say if you have the opportunity to see spring training baseball, definitely go attend. If you're watching 9 innings every day, wow, just maybe that's a choice. That's a choice, and good for you, because that's not a choice I can make. There is that point we always talk about where it's like spring gets to like the first like couple games. I'm like, yes, we're seeing baseball, right. And then after that, I'm like, I'm just waiting for real baseball now. I'm just like 2 weeks. And it's also just like every day is like, just nobody get hurt. And then just get to the season. Right. So now that the season's here, 1 day away. Let's talk about actual real baseball about to be played besides the Soul Series, which was very cool, but it's like a weird asterisk. You have to like keep putting this asterisk on there. there was real baseball played like a week ago, and huge baseball news.
Here it is. I had to pull it up.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Wow.
That tweet from 11 years ago. I don't know if it's still a thing. but
Okay, so
it did
11 years
exist.
ago, they played for
The Knutson Cup.
the Nuts and oh, I feel like I have heard of this.
Yeah.
I feel like I have heard of this. I have not seen that trophy though
I
before.
don't know if Knutson is a real person or if it's just a play on words. I imagine it's the latter. But I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew it was a real thing.
Well, well, there you go. I do not. If you know if they are still doing this and if the Rays or Twins won, please comment.
Send a picture of the trophy. Who's got
Send a
the
picture,
trophy?
yeah.
Does it have
Who's
like
got
a handler like the Stanley Cup does? Whose job is
Probably
that?
not. Probably not.
Okay,
It's
where were we? I'm sorry. I've thrown us completely off track here.
Opening day baseball is happening tomorrow. And who is going to be the pitching matchup, Brett?
Yeah, we've got Zach Eflin making his first career opening day start, coming off a season in which he finished 6th in American League Cy Young voting, and he is facing off against Jose Barrios, who had a pretty incredible bounce back year for Toronto last year. His second full season, it was his second full season for the Blue Jays, and pitched 189 and 2/3 innings, had a 3.65 ERA. He was good for 3 wins above replacement, and he was really back to the form we saw him in Minnesota. But it was coming off a really bad 2022 season for him, which his ERA was over 5. His FIP was like 4.5. And kind of bounced back into form and proved himself to be a guy that's going to be contending for all-star team appearances pretty much every year. And I think it's a pretty impressive opening day duel between two reliable, and they both have proven to be reliable starting pitching options. I don't know who the edge goes to here in terms of pitching. I think with fully rested bullpens for both teams, I think I would give the edge to the Rays, but I imagine the bookmakers have this one pretty even.
Yeah, probably just, your home team slight edge, but yeah, I think really close. Barrios was like, it is kind of wild because I feel like he was very good, traded, so bad, great. So like you kind of don't know what you're going to get, but he's been more good than bad. So kind of feels comfortable to say that 2022 is probably an aberration and an outlier and not the norm. But yeah, you have the fearsome top order of the Blue Jays versus the Rays, kind of new reformed offense. I mean, I think this will be an interesting thing. You have a lot of guys, like I said, pulled fly ball hitters, a lot more contact on the team. So be very curious to see how this works. But yeah, I think early on in the season with all of these games, I think bullpen plays a big factor, right? I think the pitchers are not stretched out yet. So you're not going to probably see too many like 8 or 9 inning starts. I think most coaches really, when most managers are not going to want to see their pitchers go that deep. They want them to go a nice, comfortable, have a great start, and then be able to be pulled without going, maybe more than like 80 pitches. So I think you're going to see not a deep starting game, but could be a very well pitched game for when Eflin and Barrios are in there. So yeah, I think I'm excited. I think these are going to be I think the Blue Jays and the Rays always play each other very close and very like have good energy in these matchups. So I think this is a fun team to face off against to open the season.
Yeah, Kevin Kiermaier back at the Trop again for the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays also, their kind of big offseason acquisition was Justin Turner. We know they've got their core of like Springer and Bichette and Guerrero all back. Dalton Varsho, who they had last year, Alejandro Kirk. Kevin Biggio is still around. Sounds like Dan Vogelbach is going to break camp with the team, so that's an interesting acquisition. Their bullpen, though, this year,
yeah, this is the weak spot, at least early in the season.
Yeah, Yimi Garcia projects to be their closer. Behind him is Nate Pearson, who I'm interested to see where he goes this year. I think he was like a pretty
Totally.
highly regarded prospect as a starting pitcher. Just throws crazy
Stuff is great.
hard, has great
The
stuff.
stuff is great.
But with
Tagging
great
man.
stuff comes a lot of arm injuries, and
Mm-hmm.
so he's dealt with that. And now he's really focusing in on being a reliever. They also have former Ray Genesis Cabrera, who I believe that was the
Mhm.
Tommy Pham trade
It
that the
is,
Rays sent to. They sent him to St. Louis. He was there for a few years. Now he's with Toronto. Trevor Richards, another former Ray,
Former Ray.
involved in some big trades as well, and he's actually found quite a bit of success. He's never really been a bad pitcher.
Ray are overly hard on him. He's much better than he's not very fun to watch,
right?
But he's
I think these teams kind of as they're currently constructed, grade out pretty level. I think the Rays have the reinforcements coming that are injured right now that would make me think they're going to finish better than Toronto. But if you look at I think the Rays are a clear bullpen edge, in my opinion. They've got one of the best relievers in the game in Pete Fairbanks and a lot of other fun pieces behind him. I think the lineups are about the same. I think the defense I might even give the defense edge right now I probably would to Toronto. I mean, they've got Kevin Kiermaier in center. They've got
not in the infield. In the out,
no, so the infield is rough.
Outfield is the Blue Jays, no doubt. I mean, if you have Kiermaier and Varsho, that's two center fielders,
and like Kiner Falefa and
great.
Springer.
Yeah. Springer is.
He's getting a little older now.
Losing a step. He's getting a little losing a step. But yeah, I mean, but here's the thing: he's your right fielder, right? And like,
he's still got a really good arm.
At least good defensively as Randy. And Randy is also not like he's another person. As he bulks up, you're kind of curious, like, how good is that defense going to be? Siri and KK in center field, I think, are pretty equal in terms of talent. I think Varsho and Springer probably raise the floor a little bit more. Infield is a little rough. IKF is a very good defensive player. Bichette is gotten better. He's not a great defensive shortstop, though. Unbelievably talented bat, though. Like, I mean, really spectacular there. Turner is 39. So, like, Father Time is it's hard to be. He's not as good as he was when he was, younger. And Vlad Jr. is still a very good bat, but not so much the best glove. And then either Davis Schneider or IKF or Biggio for second base. All are kind of average. Kirk is okay behind the dish. He's not bad, but like I would say like catching defense similar, infield defense strong for the Rays, outfield defense I'd say well advantaged Blue Jays. So I think defensively I don't see a lot of I don't see either team like blowing it on the defensive side.
Yeah,
I think you might miss some plays that you could make. You might make some plays that nobody should make. I mean, we've seen Kevin Kiermaier do that plenty. Make a play that has no.
Coming off a Gold Glove, another Gold Glove for him last season.
Just throw it on the pile. He can smelt him down to make one giant Gold Glove with a tiny platinum glove right in the middle of it. Yeah, I mean, I think the bullpen with Jordan Romano and Eric Swanson injured, that's a huge blow. That's your best reliever and your second best reliever. So the Blue Jays, like losing that's a lot. That's tough. And the Rays, I do, like I said, I think this is one of their. I am standing by. This is one of their best assembled bullpens that they've had in recent memory, and that's saying a lot. That's saying a lot, but I think this is a top 5 bullpen in the sport. I think it's a really good bullpen. I think it's an elite level. I mean, I think it's clearly top 10 for me. I think it's top 5, but things are in flux. But I really love the way this is assembled. This is like one of the most. I think it's one of the best. Like in terms of vets, like there's a lot of guys that have really done it a lot, and with relief, that's maybe not as important because it's so variable, but like it is nice to be like, okay, we know Pete Fairbanks is great. We know Jason Adam is like very, very good. And Colin Poche has been very, very good. And Sean Armstrong's been like, there's guys that have been like done it for like a couple of years.
Yeah.
And
And the Rays have pretty much decided to run it back with the bullpen. Like they traded Andrew Kittredge, but everyone else, like Garrett Clevenger, is back healthy now. So Kevin Kelly gets pushed
they
out.
traded for and decided to keep. Yeah.
And then Wagaspack is the only new addition.
That's your wild card, yeah.
And his role is kind of swingman right now. And so
right.
that is kind of what I wanted to talk about. Eflin, Savale, Littell, the first 3 games, those they're set in stone. They're traditional starters. Littell, I don't know. I hope there's a plan to manage his workload, and I'm sure there is, given the fact that it's his first full season back as a starting pitcher in quite some time. And his first full season at the big league level as a starting pitcher. I hope they're really looking after his arm. But then you're going to Tyler Alexander on Sunday. And keep in mind, the Rays are going to be playing 7 games in 7 days, which it feels like unheard of to start the season. Usually
you're like doing like a game off. It's like really split up.
The Rays and the scheduling gods, they almost always open the season at home. And a big reason for that is, look, there's been 2 games postponed already tomorrow. It makes the schedule. You've got the Dome. Both teams will have already been in Florida. It makes things a lot easier. It has one series that
Toronto probably also is happy to be playing in Tampa.
Right. They're in Pinellas County already.
They're like, we're just chilling. Yeah.
Yeah. and so it makes sense. The Rays are going to open the season at home, but I'd like to play. So you don't have to have that off day built in. Sometimes they do it anyways. I think just kind of match the rest of the schedule. You don't need the off day built in for weather, which is really the biggest reason, because you're trying to play games in, late March, early April, and on the East Coast. It's just raining. We had 3 inches of rain here in Raleigh today. And I know a couple of games have already been postponed, and they're going to use that built-in off day. But the Rays don't have to, which that means this season, 7 games in 7 days. Pepio is going to pitch Monday to open up the series against the defending champs, Texas. Sunday, though, you've got Alexander. It hasn't been decided if he's going to start or pitch behind an opener. If it has, I haven't heard that. Maybe it's been announced already that one or the other will happen. I don't think they would tip their hand if they're planning on using him.
I think they'll announce on Sunday.
Yeah, behind an opener. Usually Saturday. Kevin Cash is usually he doesn't play. He might
tell Alexander Saturday. We'll see if he. We'll see if
I think he'll tell. I don't even know who's the Blue Jays manager. The big guy,
John Schneider.
Kevin Cash is usually pretty good about that. Anyways. I guess I think my one worry about this series in the first 7 games of the season is getting to Sunday. You're playing 3 games, and then not a bullpen day, but you imagine you're going to use unless something goes wrong in any of the other 3 games, and that creates an even bigger issue. Piecing together Sunday's game and then knowing you've got 3 more games before your next off day, and managing this bullpen's workload early on. My biggest question is, how quickly are we going to tap into the Durham shuttle? Say if, Savale only goes 4 innings, and then Littell struggles and maybe gets into the 5th, and you've got the bullpen covering 10 innings worth of baseball on Saturday, then having to cover, another 4 or 5 on Sunday. Then you got 3 more games before your first off day. I think that's my biggest worry. You've got Devency and Wagaspack as your multi-inning guys. Do they try to keep them from pitching at all before Sunday? Do we see Devency early on, maybe to come in a pinch, and then he could pitch again later in the weekend? I think that's my biggest question.
Armstrong too. I think Armstrong's another guy who can go 2 or 3. I think that's why you see Wagaspack and Devency and Armstrong there. Is obviously they like him a lot, but they also have 3 innings in their holster. And so you might need them for some of those games. I think I think it's a very valid fear. I think this is early season too, right? So even if Eflin is absolutely nails, he's not going 9 innings tomorrow. He could have a perfect game. He is not going 9 innings tomorrow. I guarantee it. I'll say it right now. because like that's crazy. You can injure people, and we've seen that, right? We've seen that with pitchers, like with who is it, Kluber with the Yankees.
Yeah,
he had like an early season like no, and he like tried to close it out. He didn't, and then like got hurt like a week later or something like that. And it's like you don't want to overextend. They're in the dome, so they're not in the cold weather yet, but you really just don't want to overextend those arms too early. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of innings. So the bullpen is going to have to do it. And I think Kevin Cash, this is why he's a multi-time manager of the year. And it's mostly because of that bullpen usage and his management. And that plan that's where it's going to be. And I think there is going to be a plan coming in for this bullpen and a couple of options, right? Like, okay, here's where we can maybe steal an inning. Here's where we're going to have to go to this, because the goal is to win these games. But I think the goal is also knowing that to not lose multiple games because you've overextended your pen. So you're not going to see Pete Fairbanks. Maybe you see him on a back-to-back, maybe, but you're not going to see him 3 days in a row. So if it's a one-run game, the first 3 games, he's not pitching all 3, so somebody else is having to close that out. And I think that's where the Rays bullpen, they're comfortable, right? If Colin Poche has to close out a game, or if Garrett Clevenger or if Sharon Armstrong has to go the last 2 to finish off a game, they'll do that, because the goal is not necessarily to win that game in front of them. It is to make sure that they have the ability to win the next game too. So they are going to throw arms that they think are comfortable and good enough to get outs, no matter the situation, and they're going to not overextend it. I think Kevin Cash, this is where he makes the big bucks, and this is where I put a lot of trust in him, is knowing to not panic and to not say it's against the Blue Jays. It's a division rival. We want to start strong. We got to go full pedal to the metal here and use like Fairbanks and Jason Adam back-to-back first 2 days. Maybe that next day you go, you know what? It's a close game. Maybe we use one of them, and the next guy is definitely off the next day. But maybe we're going to give it to like Waguespack for a big 8th inning. And you're just going to be like, okay, this is welcome to the team. You're on the Rays. Welcome back from Japan. Go strike out Vladdy and then Bo Bichette with the game on the line. Yeah. Be like, just go ahead and you have a good splitter. Just go throw a splitter and get him out. Like, this is why you're here, man. Like, I think that's where it is. Like, I think this is a very tough stretch, but I think Kevin Cash thrives in these games. And I will preemptively say that people are going to probably get upset with, because these are probably going to be close games, and you're going to maybe use a pitcher, and maybe that's not going to be the best reliever in your pen for that situation. But I think this is a deep enough bullpen that I'm comfortable using any guy in pretty much any situation. And I think you're just going to have to be comfortable with that. You're going to know, like, this is 162 games. You're trying to win as many of those 162 games as possible. You cannot worry about winning the game in front of you if it might set you up to have an empty pen for the next day, which then you're struggling for the next day. So you could lose 3 in a row very quickly if you do it that way. And so I think this is a tough test, but I think Kevin Cash, Kyle Snyder, and this bullpen is up for that challenge. The Blue Jays, on the other hand, that's where I do not know if I have the same faith in John Schneider and this injured Blue Jays bullpen to be able to do the same over this tough 4-game series.
If and when the Durham shuttle gets up and running, I imagine Kevin Kelly is the next man up for pitchers, and it would be for Waguespack.
Yeah,
he's the only guy not in your A bullpen that has options.
Yep. I don't think
Adam and Poche are the only. No, I don't think so either.
He also has an option, but I think Alexander is a guy that you trust for like 4 or 5.
Yeah, he would have to, I think, struggle to be optioned. I think he's on the team until like they decide, okay, it's not working. Where they do have some starting options like Jake Odorizzi in AAA. He'll be pitching the home opener for the Bulls, which is wild. But
I
yeah,
think if you needed a starter early, if you're like, we need 5 innings, I think instead of Odorizzi, I think you see Jacob Lopez get a call up.
yeah, you're
for a
probably
spot
right.
start, and then
Yeah,
back
he's
down.
already on the 40 man because Odorizzi is
Right.
not, and that is the other thing. You don't want to be DFAing guys early on.
Right.
That might go on to contribute for other teams, and these things typically work themselves out. And the Rays know what they're doing. But
You
yeah, it
get a
wouldn't shock
blowout one way
me.
or the other, and you're great.
Right, it wouldn't shock me if
You go up
Waga's
huge.
back,
Yeah.
has like a couple multi-inning appearances, and then they bring up Kevin Kelly. I don't know who they'd rather have for that trip to Colorado. That weird things are going to happen there on that West Coast road trip. You start out at Coors, then you play the Angels for 3 games. Then you get another off day before coming home to face the Giants and the Angels again. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you have a prediction for this weekend for the first 4 games? I mean, would you be happy with a split? Do you not care? Or what are you thinking?
I never really like predictions myself.
In baseball, it's weird, right? Like,
it's tough, right? Because I think, I mean, like, listen, a series win, that's going into every series. That's the main goal, especially at home. You want to start off hot. It'd be great to go 13-0 again, like last year. That would be fun. Let's just keep doing that every year. I mean, that's ideally that's the goal. No, I think you want to get that home opener win. The big key though is this first 7 games is play well, win some games, stay healthy. It's so unsexy to say that, but like for me, even if you go like 4-3 or 3-4, but like everybody stays healthy and you lose some close games, like that happens. Like I would like to survive these first 7 games, feeling like, all right, this team can compete. Like, okay, because it's one of those things, right? Until you open the seal, I feel like I can be like, I think this team is really well assembled. But until you start seeing it, you're like, I don't know, is it? Maybe not. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's terrible. Like maybe it's everybody's bad. Like maybe Richie Palacios and Jose Caballero like just can't play at all. Like they're terrible. And like Randy's like too bulky, so he can't like run. He can't even like swing. It's like, I don't know. Like there's so many like, I think there's that like pessimism side where you're like every single choice is going to go bad. Like Eflin is going to turn into a pumpkin. Littell is just a reliever. Like all of like the worst case scenario could happen. I think overall, once you start seeing the action, start seeing the play, it's like, okay, cool. Like if this team can play, then it's a long season. So for me, a split, but like playing well in that split, right? That would be great for the first 4 games. Playing poorly and getting a split, like that would not feel as good to me. Like, right. So like get a sweep. You can play like shit and we get a sweep. I don't care. Yeah, get 4 games where the Blue Jays commit like 8 errors and you score like 1 run each game on an unearned run that like just whatever, that's fine. But like if in a split, I need at least some good games in there.
I've got some bad news about the Knutson Cup. I don't know if it's even exists anymore, but I'm looking at for the first time the Rays spring training results. So the first game they played against the Twins, it was a 4-4 tie. The second game they played was a 4-3 win over the Twins. Okay. The next game they played was a 6-5 loss. So a 1-run win and a 1-run loss.
1-1.
Then they played in the spring breakout game and tied. And then the last game was canceled due to rain. So the Twins, they split the cup.
They split the cup. There you go.
So that's the last thing you ever want to. You never want to split your cup.
You never want to split your cup. You know what?
So even down to, I don't know what the other tiebreakers are, but even down to run differential.
It
was split down the middle. That last game canceled due to rain. So I don't know who gets to keep it. Maybe we do for bringing it back up again. If anyone is in possession of it,
we'll bring it back up. If anybody, either whoever gets a chance to interview a player first, if it's us or anybody from the Twins, then just let's ask about that. That's the first question we need to ask.
And I have looked up some of the betting numbers. We don't have a betting partner, but hey, we're open to it, right? If you're a sports book and you're listening, hit us up. The Rays are favored anywhere from minus 130 to minus 135 tomorrow. So actually, decent sized favorites. The total is set at 7.5. So bookmakers expecting a relatively low scoring game.
I agree with that.
Minus 135 seems a little heavy. I don't know. Like maybe there's some, maybe they're more confident than I am. It's opening day, so I'm excited no matter what. But yeah, make sure, if bet responsibly. Again, we're not a gambling podcast. We don't have a partnership yet, not yet.
Nope.
But if you're listening and you want to do some business, let's make it happen. I think that's going to do it. We hit the hour 15 mark again. There was a lot more to talk about today than we were expecting.
Flurry of moves. Yeah, huge moves.
If you are a fan of the Baseball Isn't Boring podcast, which is not hosted by Joe Kelly, but I know he's like affiliated with it, I am doing a season preview for the Rays. I don't know when that's coming out. I'm recording it on Friday after the season has started, but check that out if you're already a fan of that show. I'll be making a guest appearance. But yeah, that's going to do it. Make sure you're liking and subscribing on our YouTube channel where we go live. These videos, you can watch it back after it has aired. And if you're a YouTube watcher, make sure to head on over to pick a podcast platform or pick all the podcast platforms and subscribe or follow. Get those downloads up for us. That helps us in such a huge way. And if you're on Apple, leave us a rating and review. I check those periodically. So if you've got a question for the show, just leave us a 5-star review, drop a question in there. I'll bring it up on the next show. And if you really want to say thank you, you can head on over to patreon.com/raiseyourvoice and become a Raise Your Voice member. We are toying with the idea of some exclusive content that could go on our Patreon site. But also, if you want to shoot us a message on Patreon and you are a member, that's probably the best way to have it read out on the show. We're not quite at the point where we're doing mailbag episodes, but maybe that's something in the future. Maybe that could be a Patreon exclusive as well. So if you really want to say thank you, head on over to patreon.com/Raise Your Voice. Make sure to head on over to dracebay.com. The season has started, so there's going to be recaps on the site and a ton, much more content as we get into the real baseball. We do some great work over there as well. Once again, thank you guys for listening. Enjoy opening day tomorrow, and we will talk to you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Sorry, Darby, we're still live.